So hi, everybody. I will be presenting the joint proposal from the 3 working groups that we had. So basically, the 3 working groups were the strategy working group, the content programming working group, and the operational working group. We had then 2 consecutive meetings for each of the working group where we discussed many elements of the Earth Humanity Coalition's activities moving forward 2025. So in this presentation are some contents that I would like to share. For example, the vision that came out of the 3 working groups jointly, the objectives, and then the integrated action plans. And then we, of course, landed on some tangible deliverables, because one of the main things that were discussed during the working groups, especially the strategy working groups, was the fact that we really need to do things that are more actionable, that has tangible deliverables, because we really need to be more action oriented rather than discuss theories. And then we will move on to governance and next steps, some key decisions that were taken in the operational working group, and then some progressing initiatives, a lot of which has already been discussed by Carlos, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. And then just some very very basic understanding of, in 2025, what sort of funding and budget plans are required. A detailed version of this is going to be discussed by Luke after my presentation. So moving on, we have the vision, equitable well-being of all on a healthy planet, which is the basic flagline for the Earth Humanity Coalition. Our mission is then to foster and accelerate systems transformation of knowledge generation processes in order to make them work towards an equitable well-being for all on a healthy planet. So the key vision that came out of the 3 working groups, where we have to identify transdisciplinary hubs that are already engaged in transdisciplinary interdisciplinary work, which is something that Prajwal has talked about when doing her presentation of the charter, is that we need to understand that organizations and transdisciplinary work are already existing, and it is then our role as the Earth Humanity Coalition to give a platform to these practices that are ongoing, to give them visibility, but also to understand and learn from them, and then also to jointly collaborate with them to see how this can come into fruition. This will lead us to identifying and bridging barriers and bridging barriers and the challenges that are present today in today's day and age into going and working with these transdisciplinary work programs. So identifying what the challenges are, what challenges are faced by various organizations, and how can the EHC help into bridging these barriers. We also want to interconnect these transdisciplinary practices in the most fruitful way possible and mobilize collective action. The other is obviously to amplify voices, and we want to connect initiatives. We want to co-construct pathways for systemic transformation and influence global agendas for research and innovation, because the agenda funding for the research and innovation is quite large, and they're done in a specific manner till now, and it would be one of the visions of the Earth Humanity Coalition as to how we can influence this global funding agendas of RNI. We want to go beyond status quo, which means we were also speaking in the programming working group about what would come after the SDGs after 2030. And we need to go beyond that scenario. So we spoke about how EHC envisions that, and we will keep speaking about that. We want joint mobilization of all domains of knowledge, breaking silos of science and other disciplines to understand how they can work in synchronization with each other. Active interdisciplinary collaborations across traditionally separated disciplines, which speaks to the first one. And then we also want grounded non-hierarchical collaboration between indigenous local knowledge systems and foster articulation of knowledge generation outcomes molded with and all strata of sections of society. Now the objectives. We would like to amplify and connect practices and initiatives. And we would like, as an EHC, we would like to offer a shared space for transdisciplinary projects, learn from and create synergies between on-the-ground activities that are currently taking place. We want to develop, innovate, breakthrough programs. So the post-2030 equitable well-being frameworks work across multiple worldviews, integrate post-colonial, decolonial, indigenous thought processes into our activities, mobilize and influence research and innovation. We want to embed all domains of knowledge in global science dialogues. We want to prioritize grounded research at the service of communities and their ecosystems, and prioritize integrative science policy, interfaces, and science for peace initiatives. Tangible deliverables. So we have the Knowledge Hub. We want to create a transdisciplinary hub system for resource where we would like resources to be available. Did anybody want to say something?
No. Go on.
Okay. And then there is obviously the Joint Programming Initiative, something that came out of the Programming Working Group, meaning that we initiate joint programming with other organizations and then move forward to get funding together with that other organizations for the specific project that we're programming for. So these projects will be ready for funding, and once that fundings are available for the joint programming, we can go ahead and make those activities into a reality. So one example of this joint programming right now would be that we have a joint programming with WAS. And similarly, we are also in the process of communicating, in a process of negotiation and discussion to form such joint programming with other organizations. Research and innovation roadmap. So we want an equity-driven global agenda, and we would like to first map out what the research and innovation is like in this day and age, and then understand from that point, and then continue conversations from this point of view as how to disrupt, for example, the global agenda into being more equity-driven. And then, as I've already discussed, we have we would like to create new frameworks of the post-2030 global goals and an action report, as in everything that we do in the Earth Humanity Coalition needs to have an action report. We need to be able to look back and find insights and pathways from local consultations. So I will of course elaborate more of the about local consultations in the next slides. So these are the integrated actions. So we have the joint programming for impact, meaning we would like to collaborate with other organizations and create programs and projects, and then leverage those programs for collective funding. In the programming working group, we talked about the seminar series. We would like to link transdisciplinary fields and focus on ecological and decolonial perspectives. We would like to, and then mapping and collaboration. We want to identify gaps and synergies and opportunities, foster stakeholder collaboration. And the first action here is a survey form that we created that will go out to the members of the General Assembly, of members of Earth Humanity Coalition, where the first step is to find out what transdisciplinary work our member organizations are already doing or is involved in, so that we can understand, or we can then experiment on how the EHC can help or support these transdisciplinary activities, or if there are any other sort of joint programming that can be done with member organizations or organizations that are suggested by members. And then, of course, there is community consultation. This is what I wanted to come back to. We have also in the strategy working group discussed how it's very, very needed to have consultations on a ground level to understand the local needs of various organizations who are working on the ground in civil society environments. So we need to be able to operate as a bridge to amplify the voices of these organizations or of these individuals who are working at the very ground level in various transdisciplinary projects in various transdisciplinary ways. So this is another community consultations action that came up with the strategy working group. And then there's, of course, transdisciplinary data hubs, something that is already in progress. We have the Transdisciplinary Knowledge Hub with Zenodo and CERN and Zenodo and CERN and the Belmont Forum, and I will maybe ask Michelle now to just explain briefly as to what the data hubs can look like. Michelle and Boris Sharkov, one of the members of the Earth Humanity Coalition, are currently leading this site, this part of the program. Michelle,
So,
if you would
yes,
like.
so this was mentioned by Carlos already. So the idea, so we have an MOU between the Earth Humanity Coalition and the Belmont Forum. The Belmont Forum is an assembly of funding agencies from all over the world, funding transdisciplinary projects for sustainable development. So the idea is that all these projects will use this open and collaborative and equitable Zenodo platform, which is held by CERN. So there will be a section in Zenodo for transdisciplinary projects for sustainable development. CERN will try to accommodate a specific section which could be divided in territories, and at the end we could have the output of territorial hubs for sustainable development. When I say equitable, this means that it is not only academic but non-academic. The society can provide artifacts like data, but also like narratives or audios or videos. So this should be equitable, open to non-academic world, territory oriented, and maybe at the end, Zenodo could be distributed in those territories. So it's an ambitious project for an open, collaborative, equitable, and maybe at the end distributed Zenodo platform orchestrated by CERN. So this is a project which was signed with the Belmont Forum. We have now approached the future Earth, and hopefully this will give us a lot of visibility in the next conference in SRI and in the meetings of the Belmont Forum funding agencies, which will spread this information and this possibility all over the world. So this is the idea. When I say that it could be distributed in territories, we have in mind to distribute it in Russia, for instance, but also in France, and everywhere. And at the end, it could be also in villages and in provinces, in countries and in group of countries, and globally orchestrated by CERN. So this is this ambitious project that we have started now with the Belmont Forum. Thank you, Rad.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Another thing that we have extensively spoken about is a seminar series in the programming working group, and how the seminar series would like to link various transdisciplinary fields, bring into visibility a lot of fields that currently does not have a lot of space for conversation. So we would like to hold these conversations to understand and then develop certain action points from there. So I will pass on to Leslie Green, from the chair of the programming working group, to maybe elaborate a little bit on this.
Thank you, Rad, and thank you, colleagues. Chair, I do see that Prajval has her hand up.
I just wanted to add one point to the community consultations point, that it's also consultations with the entities that we are calling Seeds of the New, the entities that are already doing the kind of work we are envisioning, which is interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary towards equity and sustainability. So it's also the need to consult with them to understand what their barriers are, even within the academic space. That was, I just wanted to add that point.
Thank you, Prajval.
Yeah, thank you, Prajval. And yes, and building on that exact point, where are the emerging spaces? Where are the seeds? I think that one of the most important things we can do is work with the seeds that are emerging already in transdisciplinary fields. Some of those are listed on the left of the screen there. Where are disciplines beginning to work together to ask different kinds of questions and answer them in different kinds of ways? So mindful of the fact that we are trying to address matters of planetary sustainability, using with that phrase, which I love so much, we are addressing 21st century problems with 18th century disciplines. The work of finding those conversations is already well advanced, but often between fields. And if we want to work towards a big picture science that holds all of these together, let us begin to bring them into conversation. So, for example, process ecologies, which are from the biosciences linking to industrial ecologies in the engineering debates, bioprocess engineering coming into that space as well. Another crucial area of discussion that is Indigenous relationality. There are multiple books and organizations that are through in very, very interesting ways the relationality that we have with the earth, which has been erased in the cosmology of modernist thought that separates people from planet. And I think many of those fields of discussion, some of you might know, for example, the work of Robin Wall-Kimmerer, I think is perhaps one of the most well-known. How do we bring those relational frameworks into our knowledge? They speak to, if you like, tissues of relationship that are not necessarily objects that you can pick up in a metric, but what are the relations that we have with the planet, and how are those articulated in different cultures and societies? Linked to that would be thinking about the way and trying to find a connection between the scientific field and the Indigenous field. There is, what are the processes that Indigenous groups or traditional approaches to landscapes, what are the processes that people understand, and how do those feed into the notion of the sacred? Bearing in mind that, again, the notion of the sacred often arises in relation to a modernist framework that separates religion from science. But when people have a sense of reverence and awe for the earth, that often has to do with the processes that have no name. Linked to that, earthly humanism, and linked to that, the very wonderful and fascinating earth sciences that are addressing, for example, carbon cycles and nitrogen cycles, which again are not necessarily well represented by a metric or a measurement of an algal bloom in popular discourse and environmental governance. But how do we bring those processes into thinking and planning and policy at a local level? So, for example, the nitrogen cycle being completely out of whack in how municipal planning very seldom deals with nitrogen cycles at all, and we have all sorts of algal blooms, and we have the nitrogen in all the wrong places. How do we look at that historically, both through a humanist lens in the sense of working with histories, but building earth histories? How do we understand those? Very strongly linked to that would be critical zone approaches, which is a field I've been doing a lot of work in. One Health, many of you would be familiar with that as an emerging field that says, health relates to environmental health. Urban metabolism too, what are the metabolic processes in a municipal city area? And picking up on the theme of where are matters being articulated that don't necessarily have words, that don't necessarily have names, and we're not necessarily measuring them. And in a lot of work has been done in that field by post-colonial thinkers, engaging with the surrealists and the Afrofuturists, because those fields offer a space where we can bring to attention that which is not necessarily or known. Yeah, I'll be quick. Emerging conversations similar to that. Public sciences, how do we move from the relationship of science and society via policing to working with publics in sciences for livability? What comes after 2030 has been mentioned already. How do we foster rich conversations that articulate human-earth connections, and what is the role of the creative and performing arts in that? And how do we understand the institution of science in an era of greater and greater authoritarianism, which impacts on the use of science for militarization, science for markets, and in both and science that is often subject to manipulation? So those are kind of 5 sets of conversations that have begun to emerge in multiple conversations. And thank you to everybody that's been in dialogue.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Leslie.
Leslie. Piero, you want to make a statement?
I listened with great interest all the contents and talk. Just a few words, Luke and dear friends and colleagues, that perhaps all together the various fundamental issue of this project, and I would have like to speak even here, but I didn't want to take away dynamism from the meeting. So, as we all know very well, the transdisciplinarity, that is the essential tool and strategy relatively to all our goals at the macro and the micro level. And in order to be able to deal with the complex and systemic dimension of problems, does not consist, I repeat, as you know, we know very well, simply of putting together content and or subjects from the humanities and the hard sciences area. So, which is what generally, as you know, happens in our schools and university. We try to mix the subject of the two fields and think that this is transdisciplinarity. And you know that this is a fundamental problem also for our democracy. So we need a strong project and strategy, because this unification and sharing of all sciences implies epistemological and methodological problems. It implies a focus on how one teaches more than on what one teaches. And I believe that in addition to being aware, and we have the deeply awareness of this, we should make it explicit in our action and project. This is just a few words about the importance of our focus only on on the system of thinking and the epistemological implication of our actions. Thank you,
Piero. Well taken.
Thank you, Piero. If I may quickly respond to that, I think that this discussion on pedagogies of earthly connection is really important, this also then links into the question of what future universities are going to be the most helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. So we go back to Rad. I hope you have not too much to make.
No, I can go very quickly with the next slides, because a lot of it has already been discussed, especially by Carlos, and the situation analysis. So governance and next steps were something that was very much talked about in the operational working group. And here the key points are how, moving forward, we would like to coordinate working groups more effectively. We would like to take in more members. How do we then, how the working groups are going to then simultaneously work or parallelly work and collaboratively work with each other. In 2025, given the very hefty amount of ideas, projects, and tangible deliverables that we have and in our forefront for 2025. We would also like to disseminate the reversed version of the charter. Rajwal is already on top of it. We have made a lot of edits and revised a lot of it, but we would still like to keep going to revise more of it in the future and then disseminate that version. The steering committee governance structure, something that Carlos has already talked about having a co-president from the global majority, and especially somebody from civil society organizations, but also to have more members be present, adding more members into the steering committee. So that is another conversation to have. We would like to launch some programs in 2025, for example, the seminar series, and also the consultations with the various stakeholders that we were talking about, the consultations with organizations on the ground, and how the EHC can support said organizations in their transdisciplinary work. The fifth one is, of course, to track our own activities, our own self-assessment. How do we track the impact of the work that EHC will be doing in 2025 and beyond? and how do we ensure these transformative outcomes. We would like to have proper self-assessment on the tangible outcomes that come out of all of the activities that Earth Humanity Coalition does. Progressive initiatives, this has already been mentioned before, but I will quickly go through it. We have the MOU with Belmont Forum on the Transdisciplinary Data Hub. We are in conversation with having a having a collaboration or a joint programming with the United Nations Environmental Program on the seminar series and beyond. We are also having conversations about having a significant presence in SRI 2025 and maybe other events where EHC visibility will increase. Carlos and Prajval are already working on having strategic initiatives in Latin America. We have the research project with the University of York and the Club of Rome. And then, of course, the online forum to identify transdisciplinary actions existing within the ecosystem of Earth Humanity Coalition, but also beyond. So this is something that's already in progress. Funding and budget for 2025, very briefly, we would need funding for 2025 for core activities, for the joint programming, which is something we decided to get external funding for. We have joint programming with other organizations, and then we move on to secure funding for such projects. We would also need funding for events and comms. But the goal is that we build a portfolio of funded activities so that beyond 2025, starting from 2026, we're able to apply for independent funding for EHC's core activities by showcasing this portfolio of funding and activities that in 2025 EHC is going to be involved in. And this is also something that I always show after the end of my presentation. But that would be all on my end. Thank you. If anybody has any questions.
Thanks.